Hey everybody, welcome to episode 3 of the poker vlog, Run Good, Play Better. My name's Austin Moore, and I hope you guys have been waiting for this video just like I have. It's been a little while since I've been able to get some content up. Just had to take care of things in my personal life. Work got really crazy for me. I finished college on May 3rd, and just the program was real intensive towards the end. And of course, it was snowboarding season. That's my second passion. I absolutely love it just as much as I love poker. But all in all, I've been just enjoying life, having fun. During my graduation, I had some of my closest boys and my family, of course, come out to Arizona just to celebrate the graduation. And it was just a blast. So it feels great to be making content again. This session takes place on May 9th. I play at Lake Elsinore Casino in the 2-3 game. I have a total buy-in of $500, and you'll see the cash out at the end of the video. Let's go. So the first cards I get dealt in this session are Queen Jack offsuit. I see a raise from the middle position player to $6, and I think it's a good time to bump it up to 16 here. I'm in the cutoff, and I have position on him, so I'm feeling pretty good about the raise. The big blind actually makes the call for $13 more, and after some deliberation, the middle position player actually just decides to fold his cards. It's a little strange of a move, but it's hard to really tell what he's thinking or why he raised a 6 just to fold to a small raise as the one I did. But either way, we go to flop. It comes king high with a 7 and an 8. There's no flush draw, and the big blind just checks over to me. So I think it's a good time to try to represent a king. I would lead out for $15, and I get called pretty quickly from the big blind. The turn brings the 8 of hearts, and the big blind just checks over to me again. So I think if I had a king, I would be betting here. So I lead out for $30 again, and the big blind calls pretty quickly. The river comes with a 5 of clubs, and the big blind once again checks over to me. He probably was just trapping with the king here, but I gotta stick to my story. I bet out $50. He snap calls, and I don't even show my cards. I just muck real quick. I kind of wish I had waited, but it was my first hand, and mistakes are bound to happen. It kind of sucks to lose $100 on the first hand, but given the way I played the hand and I got my camera at the table, I think the table understands that I'm going to create some action, I'm going to have some bluffs, and it's definitely going to give me some value when I actually do have a good hand on later streets. So the next hand I look down at is pocket fives. I am on the button, and I see a limp from the under the gun +1 player. The cutoff player also goes ahead and limps in, and I just raised it to $8 here. It's a small raise. Don't want to get too involved. I didn't add on to my stack after the last hand. So we see the small blind and the big blind both make the call. The under the gun +1 player also ends up making the call, and the cutoff player also calls. So we see a flop that makes me definitely wish I raised more. It comes 5 deuce king, and the action checks around to me. Given the way I played the last hand, I definitely should have raised here and got a little bit of extra money in the pot. But I just go ahead and check it and hope that somebody is going to bet on the next street. The 8 of hearts comes on the turn, which brings a flush draw and the second straight draw for 6, 7, and 3, 4. The under the gun player bets out for $7, and the cutoff player actually raises to $35 here. So I don't like how many draws are on this board. I'm going to go ahead and raise it to $83. And the small blind and the big blind both fold out pretty quickly. And so does the under the gun +1 player. The cutoff player who made the initial raise to $35, he takes a couple of seconds to himself to think about it, but he eventually ends up making the fold himself and actually turns over to me and just tells me that he made the move with a king with a low kicker. So he was trying to trap here with the king. Maybe we'll get him on the next one. We'll see how it goes. So going back to the player from the very first hand where I had Jack Queen offsuit, they called me all the way down on the King High board. He puts a straddle out for $6. The cutoff player makes the call, and I look down at Ace King offsuit. It's a pretty sweet hand. I'm gonna make it $20 to go here, and just the big blind makes the call before it gets to the straddler. The straddler goes ahead and raises to 70 bucks, exactly what I wanted him to do. The cutoff player makes the fold, and I got an easy choice. I just go all in here. I take my time before doing it just to kind of set the trap a little bit, but it gets to the big blind, he folds, and the straddler snap calls. I go ahead and just tell him I have ace king off. It's a good hand. It's gonna be on the internet anyways, so no need to hide it. He tells me I'm good. The board runs out to 4, 6, 6, deuce, and a queen, and he tells me I'm still good. So after the hand's over, the player who's in the big blind and called the $20 initially, he actually tells us he folded out ace queen, so he would have crushed both of us in that hand. Luckily, I made the move all in. He couldn't call that, and I'm going to take down a nice $200 in profit. So moving on to the next hand, I look down at pocket sevens in the under the gun +1 position. It folds over to the hijack player who makes it 20 bucks to go and folds all the way back around to me. It's heads up. 20 bucks is a pretty good size raise in this game. I think I could make the fold here or maybe even put in a re-raise, but I just end up calling and we go heads up to a flop. You will have to excuse an error I made in editing. It's going to say river on the flop board, but don't mind that. The flop comes out and it's 3 queen 3 with 2 diamonds, and I just check it over to the hijack player and he bets out pretty quickly for $20, and I don't know why, but he just seemed pretty weak right here, like he didn't have it. So I bump it up to $65, and pretty quickly he just crams all in for a $1.50. This is a pretty common move you'll see people make, especially recreational players when they have ace king, especially if he's got an ace of diamonds or a king of diamonds in his hand. So I just go ahead and make the call here. The turn is a 9 of hearts and the river brings a 6 of hearts. He tells me he made 2 pair on the turn with his queen 9, and I'm just going to go ahead and pay him out and say nice hand. I take a loss of about $170 here, but I don't feel terrible about it because I had a hunch and I went after it. You know, as a poker player, you have to do that. It's part of the game, and sometimes you're gonna be wrong. Luckily, it doesn't take too long before I wake up with ace queen suited under the gun, and I've been doing a fair amount of limping and calling, so I think limping and allowing somebody else to raise will give me a good opportunity to 3-bet pre-flop and maybe take it down pre-flop or create a big pot that I can play with a strong hand. So I go ahead and do that, and the middle position player calls it $3. The hijack player makes it $10. The cutoff player calls $10. The big blind calls $10. And at this point, I'm ready to put a raise in. I make it 40 bucks to go. And the hijack and the cutoff both go ahead and call the $40, while the big blind player takes his time but ends up folding. The flop comes out, it's 9 high with 2 8s and 2 clubs. While I don't really have a pair yet, I pretty much feel like I'm going to have the best hand a lot of the time here, and I can easily rep aces, kings, queens through jacks maybe. So I just go ahead and lead out for $45. The hijack player who made the $10 raise pre-flop, he folds pretty quickly. The cutoff player, on the other hand, he seems to know that I'm up to something here. He looks me up and down, says, I know you don't have an 8, but I just can't call here. And he goes ahead and lays his cards down as well. So I'm actually just going to take down a nice easy pot, making a profit of about $100 here. And it's a nice little comeback after the last loss. So the next hand goes kind of similar to the last one. I see a couple of players limp in, and I wake up in the small blind with pocket 8s, and I'm going to make it 28 bucks to go here. It's another 25 on top of everybody's limp. So if anybody's going to call, they got to have a strong hand. The under the gun +1 and the middle position player, they both call the $28. The player in the cutoff calls $28. And the player on the button just decides to fold his hand here. He doesn't have that great of a hand, even though there are crazy odds. So we go 4 ways to a flop, And although it's really not that great of a flop for my hands, it does hit my range pretty well. It comes out 4 king 10 with 2 diamonds. I take my time here. I figure out what the right bet sizing is going to be to try and just get people to fold. I really don't want to see a turn card. There's pretty much no turn card that's going to make me happy here. Um, Seeing especially as I don't have a diamond. So if this bet doesn't get through, I'm pretty much just going to have to give up on the pot here. But the under the gun +1 player folds. Not too long after him, the middle position player folds. And the cutoff player doesn't take too much time himself before also folding. Kind of seems like I'm getting respect from the other players. I don't know if it's the camera or just the way I've been playing, but it's really nice to win a couple of pots without even really making a pair on the board or any kind of strong hand. So going into this next hand, I go card dead for probably about like an hour and a half or 2 hours. As I said earlier, I wasn't really making too many strong hands anymore or flopping any pairs, so I go ahead and just change my seat. It actually gives me position on one of the players with a larger stack, who I think he was trying to get position on somebody else also, maybe even me, but I don't let that happen. I go ahead and take the 9 seat, and pretty much right away there is a straddle under the gun. The +1 player goes ahead and makes the call for $6, and I wake up with ace queen offsuit in the hijack position. I pull out a bet and make it $26 to go. This is pretty much me trying to isolate either the $6 limper or the straddler, but it folds around to the big blind who makes the call. The under the gun player makes the call, and so does the +1. So yet again, we're headed 4 ways to a flop with $100 in the middle, and the flop comes and really doesn't give me too much help. It comes jack high with an 8 and a 6. There's 2 clubs, and pretty much all the weaker hands that would have called from either the straddle or under the gun are definitely going to be favored here. The big blind player goes ahead and leads out for $25. The under the gun position player, he folds pretty quickly, and the under the gun +1, he really doesn't like the bet. He was playing about $40 to start, and he sits there shuffling his chips for quite a while before finally just deciding to fold. And at this point, it's just heads up. I have about 5 to 1 to make the call here and potentially hit a 10 for Broadway draw, or maybe a 9 on the river afterwards for a lower straight, or maybe even just an ace or a queen could be good if I end up hitting that to beat his jack. And I mean, even in the best case scenario, he's just betting a double draw like 9-10 of clubs or 7-9 of clubs. So once it's heads up, I just go ahead and make the call. We go to a turn, which brings out the 6 of spades. And not really much has changed. There's a spade draw now, but holding the ace of spades, I'm not really expecting him to have that. The big blind bets out pretty quickly for another $50. And seeing as nothing really changed on the board, I'm just going to go ahead and make the call here and really hope for some help on the river, or really just hope that my opponent is drawing and doesn't actually have a made hand yet. And the river brings a 9 of diamonds. The big blind snap checks. It really leads me to believe that he did just have a drawing type of a hand, and if he was on a hand like 9-10 or 7-9, he's now beating me. So I make it $45 to go here. It's a tiny bet into a gigantic pot, and looking back, I really don't love this play. If he did have a 9, it's going to be pretty tough for him to fold that there, regardless of what is on the board. $45 to win 350 is just too good of a deal. So he goes ahead and snap calls, doesn't even think about it. He shows king jack of spades, and I'm going to lose a good chunk on this pot. I really think the argument could go either way, that I could have made or lost more money. Maybe just folding on the flop would have been the best choice, but whatever you guys think would have been the best way to play this hand, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear it, and we'll just move on to the next hand. So there's a straddle to $6. I'm going to call from the middle position, and the cutoff player decides to raise up to $31. He really hasn't played a lot of hands during the past hour or two that he's been sitting at the table. So I'm a little hesitant to call as I'm thinking about it before the action gets to me, but I see the button call, and when the action folds over to the straddler who also folds, I just see some dead money in the pot and the potential to hit a set and maybe just crush this guy. So I go ahead, I make the call, and we're headed to a flop. The flop comes out and it looks absolutely amazing. It comes out 7 jack 6. I basically flopped the second nuts behind pocket jacks, and I just check it over to the cutoff player. He's already showed some aggression. I'm expecting him to bet, and he does. He leads out for $65. The button also makes the call. I'm definitely expecting him to have a drawing type of a hands and the cutoff to have a hand like ace jack or queens. So I just go ahead and rip it all in here. Even if I'm behind against pocket jacks here, which is very unlikely, I think it's a good time just to get my money in before any other scare cards come if both my opponents are just holding a jack. So I go all in for a buck 75. The cutoff player makes the call, and after quite some time the player on the button actually just decides to fold, and now it's just heads up between me and the pre-flop raiser. So we go to a run out, which comes a jack of clubs on the turn and an eight of clubs on the river. I think if my opponent was holding some kind of hand like queens or kings or even aces, that jack of clubs on the turn would have definitely stopped me from getting paid. It was a big pot anyways, so who knows, maybe he does just put the calling chips in, but either way, I'm glad I got my money in when I did, and I won a nice juicy pot. So in the final good hand of this session, I look down at ace 9 suited. There's one middle position limper, and I'm just going to go ahead and raise it to $18 here. The player on the cutoff makes the call, the player on the button also makes the call, and the player on the big blind makes the call, but not before the middle position player folds out a turn. So we go to a flop 4 ways again. The flop comes out, it's ace jack king rainbow. I've flopped top pair, and when the big blind checks over to me, I think it's going to be a good time to put some more money into this pot. I'm most likely going to be the only one with an ace here, I'm hoping, so I go ahead and make it 40 bucks to continue. I think this is a good price that somebody with a hand like king queen or jack queen or king 10 or jack 10, all of them could call. So the cutoff goes ahead and makes the call. Without too much deliberation, the player in the button and the big blind both decide to fold. We're now headed to a turn heads up against the player in the cutoff, and the turn brings a jack of spades. It's not really a great card for me. I'm not really repping a jack here. I'm more repping an ace or a king at this point with the $40 bet on the flop. But given the fact that I am hoping that my opponent has a hand like king 10 or king queen, I do want to try and still get some more value. Even if he does have an ace and we just end up chopping, it's really not that big of a deal. I'm just hoping he doesn't have a jack here, but the amount of time that it actually takes my opponent to call makes me really believe that he doesn't have a hand with the jack in it. Even if he did have a hand with an ace in it, I think he would have called a lot faster. But regardless, he does make the call, and we go to a river. The river once again brings a terrible card. It's the eight of spades, and at this point, I'm really not a fan of the board. The best I can get is a call from a king, so I check. My opponent checks. I show the ace. He says it's good, and I'm going to take down this last pot before I end up kind of just going card dead for a little bit and just decide to leave. So I mentioned at the start of this video that it's been a little while since I've been able to get on the felt and really practice my poker abilities. And I think it definitely shows up in some of my decision making and gameplay during this session. That being said, I still had a lot of fun. I bought in for $500. I cashed out for $610. That was a profit of $110 over, I think, roughly a 4-hour session. And I'm pretty happy with that. One thing that I really hope I can do better on the next video is kind of just get clips of me cashing in, cashing out. If I reload, I kind of want to show that so you guys can see it. I did have to reload once during this session after the pocket sevens hand that you guys I'm sure saw and probably laughed at a little bit just because I got crushed there.
But yeah, I mean, it's all good. It's a work in progress. I hope you guys enjoy this video. I hope you guys can, send me some tips on what you'd like to see in the next one. And I hope you guys enjoy these couple pictures of me at graduation. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help out the channel, and I appreciate it a lot. Bye.